Welcome, and thanks for tuning in to the Honest Hour. I'm your host, Luis Acevedo, the founder of MOT Media, and also the co-host of MOT Today, which airs every Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Honest Hour, which is what you're watching now, we go live every day, Monday through Friday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we have a lot to cover today, guys. So we talk about current events, some controversial topics. Here you will find real opinions, honesty. If we get something wrong, we'll admit it. We'll never lie to you, but we may be wrong. Our intention is not to lie. It's to try and enlighten as many people as possible about the reality of this world and the corruption and what can be done in order to combat it. That's the most important thing. Hey, Foster Bear. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Everybody's coming in from TikTok. Right on, right on. Got a good size today, guys. So there's quite a bit to talk about. So, for everybody new tuning in, our objective here is to try and shed some light on these controversial topics and just, provide real hope in a world, especially in media, where the truthers spread a lot of despair. A lot of people that are in the truth community look up to people like Alex Jones. And I listen to Alex Jones almost every day just so I can hear what the subset of the truth community is listening to and seeing how we can become better, make an improvement on something, right? Because a lot of his stuff is fear-based. He always just threatens, they're coming for you. They're coming to take your rights away. They're coming to do this. They're coming to do that. But there's never any solutions. So that's what we're hoping to talk about here. So the first thing that I want to get into, are you a liberal, is a question that I have from somebody on TikTok. No, I would not consider myself a liberal. No, I am not. So here's the first thing that I want to share with everybody here. I'll turn the camera around for everybody on TikTok. That way you guys can see it too. But give me 1 second here. This is the mayor of, I believe, let me see. No, I'm sorry, the governor of New York. The governor of New York. She said something today that was rather telling, and it's something most people were already aware of, in all honesty. But here's something for those that still need to realize that, hey, there's a lot of corruption. So, and we're going to talk about a little more social media. Democrat? No.
And in the state of New York, we're now requiring social media networks to monitor.
Give me a second. Let me see if I can turn this up more.
And report hateful conduct on their platforms. Thank you, Senator Anna Kaplan, and thank you, Assigned Member Patricia Fahey.
So in New York, you can hear the booing in the background. You can hear, hang on. Oh, sorry. Let's flip this around. There we go. You can hear the booing in the background. That's the governor of New York. That's who you just watched. Stale champagne. That's what you just watched. It's the governor of New York saying that they will be requiring social media networks to monitor and report hateful conduct. But anybody who's been aware knows that this has been going on for quite some time, and it's only going to increase. But there are other platforms you can go to. There's nothing that is real concern. I do think that there's going to come a time where you're going to have to be very careful about what you can say online, because you could face jail time. We've already seen some videos of that, like in Australia. So that's pretty interesting. I don't think it's anything to be really concerned about, though. You just have to know who you can speak with, and maybe not support those social media sites if that's something that you choose to do. Who? I don't know what you're asking. Who? Like, who's who? And also, it's very vague. Like, what is hateful conduct? And now we just kind of know that these social media entities are really arms of the government in some way, shape, or form. A lot of us knew this before. In Australia, who was jailed for speech? There was videos going around. That was a question on TikTok, by the way, by Stale Champagne. There were videos going around of a pregnant woman who had spoke out against the lockdowns and everything regarding the pandemic that took place, and she was detained in her home and then jailed. And it's happened other times as well. You'll just have to look into it. There's a lot that has happened as far as that goes, and people have been banned off of social media platforms for good for saying certain things. I mean, hell, we've been banned off of TikTok lives on multiple channels. We've had to rebuild channels. And we say things that aren't really like violent. Like, we don't incite violence. We don't incite hate. So it's but anyway, enough about that. So as far as that goes, like the social media issue, I don't really have any like valuable insights on it. I just wanted to share that because I feel it will help people realize, especially those who are still kind of waking up, that there's a lot of corruption in the world, and on Twitter, not Twitter, but social media platforms are being used by governments in order to monitor speech. We got a guest that wants to come on. I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but we'll let them come on. This is from TikTok. See what they want to chat about. See this specifically. Hey, how's it going?
What's going on, man?
Oh, just doing this right now. What's going on? What did you want to say? Want to ask?
What are you talking about, man?
When did you tune in?
About 30 seconds ago.
Yeah. So we're talking about a lot of different things. Right now we're talking about the governor of New York saying that social media platforms will have to report hateful conduct.
Are you for that or against it?
Against it, because what is hateful conduct? That's very vague.
Yeah, I feel that. I just think that.
All right, cool. Got a troll. All right. So usually when we get people on the show, they usually have something interesting to say. They have a question. They have comments that they want to make. But yeah, cool. So yeah, that's what's going on in New York, and it's probably going to trickle out to other places as well, which actually ties into, what one of the main topics are for today, which has to do with Mark Zuckerberg funding a political group, but it's supposed to be a nonprofit organization that's nonpartisan. But they basically help to, I don't know what I could really say, but they help to do stuff with the election in 2020, by encouraging mail-in ballots, vote by mail ballots. And anyway, Mark Zuckerberg isn't donating to this group anymore, but they are on they have a new $80 million initiative to basically infect local elections, which is really important to know, because if you are political at all, what's wrong with mail-in ballots? Well, I mean, I think we saw what happened for a long time. I mean, there was a lot of people, like my wife and I, we got multiple mail-in ballots to vote personally, so we could have fraudulently turned stuff in. We didn't vote in 2020 anyway, but so it doesn't matter. So it's just easier to manipulate, and that's the reason why. I mean, statistically, it's very obvious. If you're just looking for truth, you'll see that it's easier to manipulate, and also using the voting machines. Probably be better just to use pen and paper at the election sites. But once you get up to the upper echelons of the political world, it's going to be very hard not to have, I don't know what I'll say, fake elections. Can I say that? There's going to be a lot of fake elections once you get to that level of government, whether it be senators, congressmen, presidents, for sure, because there are people who are very wealthy who have agendas that they want to push, right? A lot of people on the left will call that dark money, which that's definitely a thing. There's dark money in politics, and the dark money in politics will want to fund certain political entities, certain political movements, certain political individuals, and they have the resources, the influence, and the money to manipulate elections. don't know any other way to say it. And so as we see here, like with Mark Zuckerberg, whether he intended to do it or not, his group that he's funded, was caught doing fraudulent things. And now they're raising another $80 million, and they're trying to go across all local elections. So all local elections is the goal. And this is actually something that's been taking place for a while now. So there's a council. I can't remember the name of it. I was trying to look it up before the show. But there's a council for mayors across the world. So there's the mayor from Los Angeles, and there's several mayors from Canada, several mayors from European countries that are a part of this group as well. And the purpose of this council is to establish a essentially globally run faction at the local level. So to do away with the nation by attacking local places first, from the inside out. And that's what we're seeing now with these wealthy individuals. They realize that. They realize that a lot of people are waking up to the fact that local elections are where you should be paying any attention if you want to get political. And I'm not saying that they've just woken up to it. They probably have been aware to that fact for quite some time. However, a lot of other people are waking up to the fact, especially younger people, because usually it's older people that know that local elections are important. So you'll see more older individuals voting in local elections than you will younger people. But now I feel that a lot of younger people are getting involved at the local level. And so there's more of a push to begin to shift a lot of the local elections into the global elite's favor. And it's just going to become more and more obvious that corporations are sort of managing, in a way, politicians. For example, in the Philippines, they had an election. It's already over. But Meta, aka Facebook, was preparing. They prepared to make it a fair, safe election. So, doing fact checking, making sure there's no misinformation or disinformation regarding the election. Also, they are training something most people are not talking about. Give me 1 second here. There it is. Meta is also training politicians in Australia. So that's Facebook, for those of you who don't know. So a lot of this is going to be becoming more. It's not going to be such arcane knowledge, right? Not that it was before, but it's going to be more mainstream. So, like right here, Neta to help train Australian politicians' influence in a run-up election. So this has probably already happened because this was March 15th, 2022. And so this is why I've been saying for quite some time that we are going to see, I think, I could be wrong on this, but I think that city-states are going to make a comeback. And I believe that smart cities will facilitate or help facilitate that transition, as well as cryptocurrencies. Because if you look at in Nevada, their attempt, I talked about this before on the show as well, but in Nevada, they are attempting to pass a law which would allow corporations to take over unincorporated land and make it their own and have their own government. And then that county can then become an incorporated county and partner with other counties, and essentially making a city government if they so wished, if they became powerful enough, spread out far enough. And the company that is going to be the test dummy for this in Nevada is Blockchain LLC. They're planning on making digital identification, digital wallets, all of these things, which are of some concern. I can see why people are concerned about it. But that is the move for the global elite. I feel that they would have to have local hubs of control, and probably the best way to retain that control is through corporations, because you can employ people. There's an interesting book that I recommend people read. Don't watch the movie. The movie was horrible. but it's called the Circle. And the Circle had this corporation where people would work for it and they would live on campus, sort of like a Google campus or something like that, right? So everything that you would need, was on the company's grounds. Your housing, all of it. And so that's eventually what I believe we're going to see become more popular as people become more desperate for work and things of that nature. They're going to basically, because you're already seeing it now, that people are willing to sell their souls to their corporations to make a paycheck. And I think it's just going to become worse and worse. There's a lot of literature by so-called elites talking about a future where something like a Walmart will have apartments that people live in. I don't know the exact literature, the title, the authors, but I do know I've recommended this person before. I'm not his biggest fan, but he is a wealth of knowledge on these specific topics because he is well read into them. And he actually gives lectures and in-depth conversations or tellings about what this is. You'll own nothing and be happy. Yeah, that's essentially it. Now, I mean, we can make the argument that we don't really own anything right now. You know, Jesus says that he doesn't own anything, right? He says that the Son of Man has no place to sleep or rest his head. There's some truth to that, in a lot of people who are extremely happy in life pretty much have nothing, or they realize that they own nothing. Now, I understand that it's more nefarious and evil when it's coming from the global elite, but there is some truth into what they're saying, that we don't own anything, because we can't really own anything. We can claim possession of something and defend that possession while we're alive, but then once we die, we don't really own it. The earth, you can't really own the earth anyway. But I do get that, like, you will have no privacy, essentially, is what they're talking about, and being under constant surveillance states, which there are these communal houses that are becoming more popular in big cities. But let me circle back around to what I was saying before I go off into that. Jay Dyer is the individual I was referring to that gives lectures and long presentations on this, going over the literature that these elites have written about. And one of the things that they have written about is essentially Walmart having apartments. And I think that, that'll translate over into smart cities that corporations own. And it'll be essentially a surveillance state that you will live under. But I don't say everybody will live under there. I think that you will have to choose to live in that kind of environment. And I don't see a future where we're living in a Hunger Games like world. But I do see people accepting a Hunger Games reality, in that they will live in those dystopian communities because they're essentially slaves. And if you look at society today in big cities especially, it's already an experiment of that, right? And so circling back around to what I was just saying regarding communal homes and cities, they are right now working on and promoting these living quarters, essentially, in a shared building. So it sounds like an apartment building, but it's a little different than that, because you have common areas. So every unit has its own, bedroom, bathroom, etc. But as far as the kitchen goes, entertainment room, it's all common area. And that's what it's attempted to be promoted. And, this is why you have to really pay attention to what they're doing, or what they're promoting, because there's so much truth in it, right? Because people want to live in a community, right? That's why we like neighborhoods. I've criticized neighborhoods in the show before, and I stand by my critique of them, because neighborhoods separate families. They were one of the leading causes, one of the leading factors as to why extended families and nuclear families have split up, because it's not cool to live with or live next to your mom, your dad, your grandpa, your grandma. It's frowned upon to live with them or live next to them. And so you live in a neighborhood surrounded by strangers, right? And so there is something natural to wanting to be with other humans. Neighborhoods are not unnatural. cities, I don't think, are unnatural to a degree. Like, people want to live next to where they can get their food, where they can get their clothes, where they can get supplies readily, pretty easily. And I think that a lot of that has just been manipulated into separating people from their families and making them dependent on this bigger system, society, if you will. And so I think that, it's been a long time coming. I feel that this has been going on since like the Industrial Revolution, when people started moving away from the farms. I came to that conclusion when I was reading about it. I have this book. It goes over the timeline leading up into like the Gilded Age, the Industrial Revolution, over that whole timeline. And it was talking about how people thought that they would have a better life moving into the city. That didn't turn out to be the case. That's where you get the ghettos. That's where you got the issues of. It was more prominent, the issues of multiculturalism. I'll put it that way. That's why you had the German communities, the Irish communities, the English communities, the Jewish communities. Right? They all had their own neighborhoods, and they wouldn't go in any other neighborhood. But that wasn't really an issue when you were just living on the farm, right, with your extended family. So that's why I'm saying it's important to realize what they're doing, because there's a lot of truth in it. Just like you'll own nothing and be happy. Like, yeah, you can't take anything with you when you die, right? So you don't technically own anything. So I don't know. It's more of like a philosophical thing, a spiritual thing. But obviously, you do claim possession on things while you're here. And you can mark your territory, defend it. I think that is a very natural thing to do. And it is a moral thing to do, especially if you have a family, to be willing to protect yourself and them. But on some level, it is true that you already own nothing, right? Most people don't even own their house. They're just under the illusion that they own their house, but they actually have a mortgage, and their bank is their renter, their landlord, right? Most people are under the illusion that they own their car, but their car is actually loaned, right? And we can make the argument that our bodies are simply loans from God. Now, we don't really own our bodies, right? Whatever you want to call it. But I don't know. My whole point is that there is truth into all of these things that are apparently dystopian and evil. There's a lot of truth in them, but they're manipulating the truth, and they are guiding consciousness into one direction to essentially listen to their worldview. And I believe that we just have to be aware of it. And that's why, I want to talk about things like this, and have shows like this. That way we can, just share what's going on. But as I was saying, a lot of these things are going to be voluntary. They're consent-based systems, which is very important, that I feel a lot of people don't understand or don't want to accept, because then they have too much responsibility, because they're being complicit, right? So if you get put into a smart city, it's because you weren't prepared. If you get put into these dystopian worlds where you're living in a Walmart apartment, it's because you didn't see it, or you chose not to see it because you chose the material over truth. You became too materialistic. And that just leads you down a very, very bad path. And so, there's so many other options that you can take. Like, you don't even have to go and be a full-blown homesteader either, be totally self-sufficient. You can just be a valuable member in a community, right? You could be somebody who's maybe you are very fortunate and you have quite a bit of money because you have a good skill set, and so you could essentially be the financer for your community. You could help make sure projects get taken care of, right? Or you could simply be the plumber in your community, or the mechanic, or you could have a certain animal, right? Like, you could just have sheep, and then you are known for your wool. Like, you don't have to have a homestead to be self-sufficient. You need a community regardless. Like, you always will need a community, which is why there is some truth in what they're saying in like this whole globalization and free market, right? Although it isn't true that we need all these countries to make a freaking pencil or to make a knife or to make anything really, but we do need other people to help us make a functional community and a functional economy. That is very, very true. You can only do so much on your own. And there's a farm I work at on Sundays. We were talking about how the Amish aren't even really self-sufficient because they rely on a lot of Chinese steel, because a lot of things just aren't made in America anymore. And so that isn't to say that we can't make our own things here, but it's there's also this romanticized illusion that you could be completely self-sufficient without the help of anybody else. This whole idea of being a Sigma, which I get, like there are men in the world who are Sigmas who want to operate outside of a hierarchy, don't really care about it, and are pretty successful in what they do, socially speaking, and maybe even professionally, whatever. But I don't know that that's necessarily a real thing. And like, I don't know that that's like a thing that exists outside of society, to be honest with you, because you can't really be the Sigma male, this lone wolf, if you are trying to be self-sufficient in like a community, because you need a community. And hierarchies are just natural. So I don't know, but that's something else. But yeah, so you will need a community in order to be truly self-sufficient. But you don't need to like think that you need to do everything on your own. For instance, we live in an apartment right now, and we could have a garden, but I'm not a big fan of vegetables. I've ranted on vegetables quite a bit. We can grow some fruit, but yeah, I'm not a big fan of vegetables. I think they're a lot more harmful than they are beneficial as far as nutrition goes and your health. And so we can't have livestock here because, well, we live in an apartment. So what I can do in turn is find somebody who needs some help. How can I help them? And that's what I did with the farm that I work for. I guess I can say I work for them because they give me 2 gallons of free raw milk every Sunday. And then we have 2 others. Then we have 2 other shares that we buy from them as well. But there have been times where they have given us free meat, free butter, free eggs as well in exchange for my work. So that also destroys the illusion that you need money. You don't really need money. Money is a convenience. It's convenient, and it makes life a lot easier, especially when you're dependent somewhat on a society, right? So the whole point of that little rant right there is to basically say there is truth in what they're doing, like in cities, and trying to push everybody into smart cities and neighborhoods, because people want to be next to each other. But it's more natural for people to be by others that have that are like-minded, share the same values, and are probably their family, right? It just makes sense. It just makes sense. And if it isn't your family, really close friends who you share the same beliefs with. So that's a very natural thing, and I feel that gets demonized a lot. I think that's why a lot of people are under the illusion that communes are bad, right? Like every time I share what my political view is how I think a functional government should be. The best form of government. Although I don't know, I'm not an expert at this stuff, but I think it would be more of a tribal, like communal setting would be the probably optimal setting for human governance, human politics, I think. Because if you think about it, how many people do you agree with in your everyday life? How many people share your same beliefs or your values that you deal with in your everyday life? Probably very few, but probably a lot if you are unfortunately brainwashed, right? But if you are a free thinker, if you try to follow truth and see through a lot of the BS, you will find more often than not, you don't share a lot of values with the people you interact with on a day-to-day basis. So it doesn't really, I think, do well over the long term. I think it's just more natural to have small communities that govern themselves. And a lot of people have labeled me an anarcho communist, but I don't agree with anarchy, and I don't agree with communism because I believe in classes, I believe in races, I believe in hierarchy, and I believe in rulers. So it's like, I don't know. People have tried to label me that, but that's not at all what I'm aiming for. I just think that's the most natural way to live, is in those communities. So, yeah, that. So circling all back around, there was a bug on my laptop. I had to kill it. I didn't have to, but I wanted to, I guess. I don't even know. I just had the inclination to like put my finger down and end his existence. I don't know. Whatever. I believe we all deserve health care. I don't care if my coworkers disagree. They're immoral to disagree. I mean, okay. Okay. I mean, if that's what you believe, but what is healthcare? What is healthcare? Like, what do you think healthcare is? A serious question. And why is it immoral? Why do you believe those things? Do you believe those things because somebody told you that you should believe those things and it just felt right? Or do you believe those things because you have logical and actual evidence to support it? Like logical reasoning and evidence to support what you're talking about. And do you even have a definition for healthcare? So, yeah, but so all that being said, if you want to do anything, I work in healthcare for one. What does that mean? Okay, you haven't. That doesn't explain anything. What is healthcare? What do you mean by healthcare? Like, is jabbing somebody with poison healthcare? Is telling somebody that they should eat carbs because of the food pyramid healthcare? Is telling somebody that they should have a healthy balance of carbs and vegetables in their diet because it's healthcare? Like, what is healthcare? Like, what do you mean exactly? Are you encouraging, people to do these hard exercises which are proven to like shorten your life? Like, what exactly is healthcare? And what do you do in healthcare? You could literally be a receptionist at a hospital and do nothing related to somebody's health aside from checking them in. So, I don't know. And also, if you deserve, treating someone with cancer with radiation and chemotherapy is an example. So you think that radiating somebody is an example of healthcare? A lot of people would argue that it's a form of torture, and there's a lot of evidence to suggest that it is very, very bad. Yo, keep your so-called right. We got a comment from YouTube, Foster Bear. She says, "Yeah, keep your so-called healthcare. I'm an EMT on an ambulance." Okay, cool. So there's a lot of people. There's a lot of evidence, a lot of studies, a lot of this that has shown that chemotherapy is actually very, very, very bad for you. And look into autogenous Vonderplanets. I think Tom Barnett may talk about this a little bit. I know Weston Price talks about this. Severin talks about this as well. But a lot of tumors and cancers are primarily caused by a high carbohydrate diet and sugars. And there's a lot of people who have reversed, I don't know about all cancers, but certain types of cancers by completely eliminating carbs from their diet because the tumor cells, or the tumors, if you will, feed off of the carbs. And so a lot of fat is supposed to, I hear, help combat that. But radiation, that doesn't make any sense that radiation would be good for you on a logical level. Like, it never is good. to be radiated. Never. Like, assuming nuclear weapons are real, we know, at least from what they say, assuming that this is all legit, we wouldn't want to go into a place that has a lot of radiation. The best way to reverse heart disease is through that's false, actually. That is extremely false. The best way to prevent heart disease is to eat a lot of cholesterol and saturated fat, because you are made up of cholesterol and saturated fat. What actually causes heart disease, maybe you'll know this, I won't even say what causes it, but the first case of heart disease in America was like in the 1900s. And that's when we started switching to more of a plant-based diet. That's when the diet was being switched over to more carbs, more plants. Yeah. Yeah, heart disease didn't really exist back in the day. And in ancient Chinese medicine, they understood this too. Like, they would give somebody, if you have a liver issue, the ancient Chinese would give you liver to eat, a piece of raw liver. A heart issue, whatever that would be back in the day, give you a piece of raw heart to eat. It's not, you can't even digest plants. That's something most people aren't aware of. You can't digest plants. When you eat a plant-based diet, why do you become gassy and bloated? The Academy of Nutrition compelled over. Dude, those academies are bought and paid for. The Rockefeller Foundation took over a lot of this stuff. I understand that you won't agree with what I'm saying because you'll label me a conspiracy theorist, tinfoil hat nut job. We digest plant. False. That is so false. We have the same digestive tract as a dog and a cat as well. We have more similar, I won't say the same, but our digestive tract is almost identical to a dog's and almost identical to a cat's. And what are they? They are carnivores. In nature, most of their diet is going to be raw meat, raw organic meat. As far as plants go, cows that can digest the grass, the fruit. And when the hell is the last time you looked at a piece of grass and said, "Oh my God, I want to eat that piece of grass"? When's the last time you looked at a plant and said, "Wow, I really want to eat that plant"? You begin salivating because you're looking at a freaking head of lettuce. Okay, that's just false. A dog is an omnivore. A cat is a carnivore. You don't know what you're talking about. I mean, everything technically is an omnivore. Everything. Gorillas, which are supposed to be vegetarians, they eat meat too. So are they omnivores? Will you say a gorilla is an omnivore? Deers eat dead deer all the time. Deers eat dead squirrels all the time. Are they omnivores? No, you would say that they're herbivores. I salivate over an apple, not a wounded animal. Nobody said a wounded animal. Like, what are you talking about? And that apple is arguably alive. Like, there's bacteria on that apple. You're killing the bacteria. You're killing the living organisms on that apple. And also, most apples are man-made and manufactured. They're just straight up sugar balls. Most apples in nature people wouldn't eat because they're called crab apples and they're extremely sour. Those are real apples. Just like there's no such thing as broccoli in nature. Broccoli is completely man-made. Kale, completely man-made. It all comes from, I believe it's the mustard weed. I believe. Do you remember where this comes from? I don't remember exactly, but it comes from a certain weed. If we were truly omnivores, we would salivate over wounded animals. No, like, you don't have to salivate over wounded animals. I do salivate when I look at a steak, but when I see an animal dying, I'm not like, "Oh my God, that looks really, really appetizing." No, that makes no sense. Your arguments are like not good. And dogs are not omnivores. Why in the hell? You know, when they eat, when do you see a dog eat grass? And what happens after it eats grass? It throws up. So the reason it's eating the grass is a form of detox, which there is some argument to say, eating plants can be a form of detox, but also drinking raw milk and drinking raw eggs. Your chicken sandwich was man-made in a factory farm. Your arguments are completely retarded. When did I say chicken sandwich is good? I've been criticizing carbs. Have you not been listening to me? Why would I why would I want to get processed meat when I can go to a local farm? A dog can survive and thrive on a plant-based diet. Sorry if that hurts your feelings. It doesn't hurt my feelings. I mean, you're just obviously ignoring the truth because they don't. They can't thrive. Humans can't thrive on a plant-based diet either. I mean, there's a ton of evidence for it. I mean, if you look at the epitome videos that Severage makes, he has about 9 or 10 of them, and they're about 20 minutes long a piece of vegans throughout the years. And as their diet, as they progress in their vegan journey, they look worse. They look worse after 5 years, 4 years. They look like they're starving, most of them. It's actually a really sad thing because a lot of veganism and vegetarianism, actually all of vegan and vegetarianism derives from a religious-based thinking, and that the Seventh-day Adventist and Kellogg's actually work together to create your vegan and vegetarian diet. Fact. The Seventh-day Adventist and Kellogg's work together to create this fiction that you believe. I've been surviving and thriving on a plant-based diet I highly doubt that. I don't believe you if you think that. I just don't, because it's biologically impossible. I don't, and it's not optimal living. I guarantee you you're bloated a lot of the times. I guarantee you that you're gassy a lot of the times. And that's not normal. That's not normal at all. Like, not good. It's not a good way to live. And where do you get your cholesterol? Where do you get your saturated fat? And all plants are missing at least 15 micronutrients. And so then what do you have to do in order to get those nutrients that you're lacking? You have to go to the pharmaceutical industry that are making vitamins and supplements. You live in a delusional reality then. My cardiovascular system has never been better. Whatever you say, man. Whatever you say. Whatever you say. I just know it's biologically true. And I get it. It's a very touchy subject now because everybody is thinking that it's because you're so far removed from nature. That's the only reason you believe that. Vegan and vegetarian diet, nobody in nature has ever survived off of it. They can't, and they wouldn't. You go tell your ancestors from 1,000 years ago, get in a time machine and say, hey guys, I found the right way to eat. Eat this head of lettuce. They're going to laugh at you and say, shut up, be a man, eat some of this heart. But then you're going to cry because it's a wounded animal. But then everything has to die. Everything dies. It's a cycle of life. When I die, worms, bacteria, maggots, and stuff like that are going to eat me. We're not hunter-gatherers anymore. It's 2022. See, you are so far removed from nature. You are so far removed from reality. So far removed. Go work at a farm for a little bit. Go work at like a livestock farm. See how things really work. And this is why, this is a perfect segue, actually. The exact topic that we're talking about right here is a huge reason why we are seeing this take place. I will have to just read it for everybody on TikTok. But America is looking down the barrel of a population collapse. And also, America is not the only country. China is as well. Boom. And the reason for that is because people aren't having children. And one reason people aren't having children is because they eat a plant-based diet. And so their sperm count lowers, their estrogen increases, testosterone lowers, and women aren't able to reproduce on a plant-based diet. It's very hard for them to do that. It's very hard for a woman to breastfeed on a plant-based diet. It's very hard for a baby to live on a vegan, vegetarian diet as well. So you actually see a lot of vegan and vegetarian babies dying prematurely because they are so brainwashed into feeding them plant-based diets. It's really sad that they're so religiously brainwashed into that. Not that I have a problem with religion, by the way, but there is a certain type of religious thinking that is very bad. So, it's yeah. I mean, there's other reasons why we're not, why we have this population collapse among us. So they say. I think that people should just start having kids. Good moral people should start having kids. And be willing to sacrifice the material for your family. I think is very important. But a big reason, why people aren't able to have kids is because they're effectively making themselves sterile, whether it be through the healthcare system that SOF4TOK so loves. It's being a part of that healthcare system where you're getting a bunch of bad drugs, bad treatment, or you're getting a really bad diet. Could be another reason why, and also the stigma behind it. Right? There's a lot of people who think that once they have a child, their life ends. That they no longer can have fun. They no longer can be themselves, and basically their whole existence revolves around that child, which they should look at as the greatest opportunity in their life and the most important work that they will ever do. I think it is the most important work anybody will ever do. And women are, particularly women, are definitely pressured into not having children and having careers in our society. And so not only won't you have enough young people potentially in the future to replace some of these jobs, but who's going to take care of you when you're old if you don't have kids? Like, people are just so short-sighted and selfish on this particular issue. Like, there's a lot of reasons why we have this. I mean, especially in China, right? They had the one-child policy. Now they have the three-child policy. And in America, it seems like the wealthier a country gets, the less children they have. And a lot of so-called elites think that is a good thing. And it's just a natural thing, but I don't think it's a good thing. I think it's actually a really, really harmful thing because, as I mentioned before, like, for instance, a lot of women are deceived into thinking that they can have a really good career and a fulfilling life and accomplish a lot in the world and not have a family and children. But in reality, whether you want to accept it or not, the only thing society looks at in reality, in truth, when it comes to a woman is her family. Like, how many kids she has, is she married, does she have any grandkids? That's what people really care about when it comes to women, right? At a societal level, on a societal level. When it comes to men, yeah, you may get asked, do you have children? Do you have children? Do you have a wife? But it's more so, what do you do? What do you build? What have you accomplished? And it's because women now have to overcompensate and try and become more masculine, and they can't be feminine because there's too many weak men. And there's too many weak men primarily because plant-based diets, porn, addictions, a lot of that kind of stuff definitely contributes to making weak men. I won't even go into all that whole thing with porn. I mean, porn is used as a tool of weapon in other countries. Like the United States, Israel will use porn in other countries to make men docile. And this is going to create a bigger problem over the long term, not just by not having children and women not wanting to have children with most men because of how weak they are. Another issue is going to come into play where you're going to have polygamy is going to make a rise, whether people want to accept it or not. It will naturally because there aren't enough real men. There aren't enough strong men in the world. And so a lot of the men that are out accomplishing things that aren't pussies, I don't know if I can say that. Hopefully I don't get banned for that. that aren't I don't know what I can say. All right, I'm trying to be tactful. I'm tired of getting banned on TikTok. So anyway, there's a lot of men who don't have, don't have purpose. I think it's a good way to put it, or just very effeminate. Do you ever talk about the school stuff? No, we did not talk about the school stuff. Not yet. I'm actually going to switch over to that in a second. Which, yeah. So to end that, I think polygamy is going to become a big thing that returns. We already see it in other countries taking place right now, and it has been. And so with that, you're going to have more men who don't get sex, and they then become ungrounded and can do wild things. That's why, arguably, you have a lot of issues in the Middle East amongst the male population, because they don't really have, that woman to ground them in a way and keep them in reality in some ways. So that is definitely an issue. And I see that being an issue that is not really talked about. It's not really talked about. There's a few people who talk about it. And this is also why I feel that in part Christianity is sort of failing, because we ignore so many truths in Christianity, right? Like the Muslims accept the fact that, you can be polygamous. You can only have 4 wives. The Christians, they don't want to accept that because they're not all of them, but a lot of them are just straight up brainwashed and indoctrinated and think that, no, you can only have one wife. If you have more than one wife, it's sinful. But then it's like, what about everybody in the Old Testament? What about all the patriarchs? Pretty much all of them, if I'm not mistaken, had more than one wife. And I'm not saying that that's the ideal way to live, but it is something that is acceptable within Christianity, and it's one of the things that many people have been denying for a long time, and it has ultimately hurt Christianity in the long run. And why Christianity, I think, will ultimately fail in a lot of the Western countries, and Islam will take over, is because a lot of the reasons that I just said, they're having kids. Everybody in Islam, in the Muslim cultures, they know, have kids. Everybody's like, have kids. And if the men are, financially resourceful enough, they'll have another woman. But a lot of times, it's not even what people think it is. It's like they're marrying widows, right? They're marrying widows, and it's also a lot of people, are very perverted these days, and they'll think that it's just going to be a fun time to have. It is logical. It is very logical. I mean, after all, the Pareto distribution will work for the dating realm, where, what is it? It's like 80% of the women want 20% of the men, right? So, that's a huge thing that most people just don't want to accept. But like in Islam, like if you look into some of their stuff that they have to say regarding it, they state that, well, if you do have more than one wife, like I said, more than often she's a widow. Are you really ranting that Muslims will yes, 100%. They will. They're doing it right now. Muslims are freaking crushing it when it comes to having children. And America is a de facto Christian state, and we have a collapsing population because Christians are cucked by and large. Islam is not. They are crushing it. And so anyway, as I was saying, a lot of their second, third wives are widows. They already have children, and it is the best place for them to go. And also, they have the financial resources to provide for everybody. Not only that, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Christians exist outside the U.S., right? Plenty of Christians having babies globally. Yeah, okay. But I live in the United States, and the United States is a collapsing population. And I'm sure I'm willing to guarantee Muslims are having more babies globally than Christians. Muslim birth rate. 3.4. Then move. U.S. isn't a Christian nation. Why would I move? I don't want to move. I'm cool here. I don't know why you're saying that. You don't like what I'm saying. That's all. Muslims are, so they have a 3.4. 3.4 per woman. Now let's look up Christian. Then deal with Muslims existing. I have no issue with Muslims existing. I don't. I think Muslims are crushing it. I think Muslims are more grounded in truth than a lot of Christians, especially in the United States. I think a lot of Christians have cucked. They've become very weak. They can't even have disagreements within the church. They can't even have opposing thoughts within their own organization. It's, in certain churches, I've had so many personal experiences from this, and just other people I know have had these same experiences. So let's look up Christian birth rates. Yep, Muslims are beating Christians. 2.7 per woman for Christians. Sounds like a Protestant thing and a Catholic thing and an Orthodox thing. Orthodox, I don't get why I have to kiss icons and kiss a ring. When I go into a Catholic church, why do I have to confess to somebody I have no clue who he is? Why do I have to kneel before a statue? What else? Why am I eating, the blood? Why am I drinking a symbolic version of the blood in both churches? When in the Bible it literally says, don't do that. Don't consume blood. Like it literally says that. So yeah, Protestants are really bad too. And I'm not against Christianity. I would consider myself a Christian. But yeah, Muslims are outpacing Christians, Mormons, which are arguably Christians. Let's look at their birth rate. Birth rate, Mormons. Birth rate. I bet you the Mormons are crushing it too. Yeah, they're right up there with the Muslims. 3.4. 3.4%. Some people believe that the Muslims are going to be the Mormons are going to be the biggest religious group in America. I could see that happening too. So Mormons are interesting. I don't know a lot about them. I have the Book of Mormons. I haven't read it yet, but I have done a little bit of research. I have talked with the founder of the Mormon Transhumanist Association. And we've talked about Mormonism and obviously transhumanism as well. And, I had a Mormon high school teacher. Seemed okay. But yeah, so, and it's not even just Christians. I mean, in China, where they're more atheistic or agnostic or pagan, I don't know what you'd want to call them really, because there's a lot of spirituality in China. So I'd probably say more pagan. They're having collapsing birth rates. But the Muslims aren't. The Muslims get it. But all right, let's talk about the last topic that I have today. And that has to do with Senator Lindsey Graham, South Carolina. He said that it's time to mobilize our retired and former service members to secure schools. So basically what he wants to do is he wants to put veterans in public schools to protect them, arm them with weapons, and say, hey, you stand outside of schools, you protect the children. Now, if anybody listened to the show last week, or this just yesterday, actually, on Sunday, I basically said what the state of Ohio was doing, what Governor Mike DeWine of Ohio was doing regarding the bill where he is legalizing teachers to own weapons and carry them in schools and protect schools, students, allegedly, is a step towards militarization of the schools. And now we see that a senator is talking about having veterans, armed guards outside of public schools. A lot of people think that this is the solution to the gun problem. A lot of people seem to think that this would eliminate mass shooting events. The one thing that I would like to point out is this is extremely binary thinking to begin with, right? So it's one side saying we just have to get rid of these deadly weapons. The other side saying, no, we have to give more people more guns and protect the schools. And the reason they say this is, well, we protect our politicians, don't we? We protect the president with guns, don't we? That's one of the biggest arguments used for promoting the militarization of schools. But as I've mentioned before, the President of the United States is the commander-in-chief, right? He operates and controls a military. So it makes logical sense that he would have a military or armed service around him at all times because he is the commander-in-chief. So it makes sense that the president would have that. Are students, are kids commanders of chiefs? Are commanders of chief? No, they're not. Are kids a part of any military? Kinda, but no, they're not. The military I'm talking about is more so like of the mind and the culture, the evil spiritual military. But anyway, a lot of them are, unfortunately, because they're brainwashed by their parents, by society. Anyway, so that argument doesn't make sense. So there's this false binary going on. That then what's your solution if you don't think that we should give teachers or have armed guards at schools, and you don't think that we should take away guns? Well, probably get rid of the public school system as we know it and go to community schools, which there are a rise in community schools, and there is a rise in people homeschooling. So that would obviously be a better solution than militarizing schools. I mean, in some schools, they're already using artificial intelligence to monitor the children and detect weapons. What are they going to do with that data? And eventually, isn't it going to be too dangerous for a human life to be standing guard outside of a school? And then what do you have in place of that human life? You're going to have some sort of robot, an armed robot that can malfunction outside of the school defending it. That's obviously a long ways away. Drones as well, right? But ultimately, the step to militarizing schools is a bad thing. Firstly, because let's say we have police officers at school. Well, per the Constitution, police officers have no obligation or duty to protect you or me. They don't. They have none whatsoever. Justice Scalia, was the main supporter of that bill, or that ruling, rather. The military. I know a lot of people in the military. A lot of them are good men. But ultimately, the military is used for what, as of right now? To go overseas and promote global homo and protect poppy fields. And then do you really want to give teachers guns when 1 in 20 teachers have a mental health disorder? And then also there's a increasing number of students being assaulted sexually by teachers. Not cool. Not cool at all. And in America, we're talking about teachers suffering from a mental health crisis. If teachers are suffering from a mental health crisis and you're more likely to be abused sexually in a public school by a teacher than you are at a church or any other real institution like that, for that matter, why would you want to arm them? I don't get it. And also, why would you want veterans walking around your schools with guns? Do you think that's going to make your child feel safe? What's the debate here? There is no debate. We're just talking about that Lindsey Graham's bill to allow veterans to be armed and guarding schools. And then we're also talking about the bill that Mike DeWine is set to sign. Mike DeWine is the governor of Ohio, that would allow teachers to possess a firearm in the school to defend it. And I am saying that these are bad things. They're bad things because of the rise of mental health issues in teachers, the rampant abuse that takes place in teachers, mental evaluations before allowing vets to guard. Obviously, they'll be doing that, but why would you want your school to be militarized? Would the children feel safer because they have armed guards walking around the school? Or would it make the school even more ominous? Probably the latter. And then what happens as we progress down this, maybe say regress, as we keep regressing as a society and things become more and more upside down? I mean, tactics of intimidation can really increase if you have armed staff, armed guards in the school. I mean, my school had 4 police officers guarding it, and you probably went to a bad school. There's probably still violence at the school. I don't know. I know that my school didn't have police officers, and police officers have no legal obligation to protect you per the Supreme Court ruling in 2005. And yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with police officers guarding the school. I don't agree with the militarization of schools. I think that if you're getting to that point as a society, maybe it's time to reevaluate your parenting. Maybe it's time for you to take responsibility and homeschool your children or have community schools. Right, but we did have a student bring shotguns to school. It was hunting day, and they caught it before he got to campus. Okay, so was he just bringing the shotgun because it was a hunting day? Like, I don't know. People used to bring guns to school all the time, and there was never an issue until Columbine. And I think Columbine was a false flag event to start what we now have. And a lot of these events are false flag events. Like what just happened, 100% false flag at Uvalde, 100%. So if you have police officers standing down, you have nobody doing anything, pretty much. Why would you want those same people protecting the school? Doesn't make any sense. And also, if we have FBI agents grooming these kids, which they provably had all the way back to Columbine, which was the one that started it. It was the catalyst. Yes, it was. I am a conservative and own guns. I have never hurt anyone. Yeah, it's an issue for sure, though, 100%. And Columbine was a false flag event. Like, yo, they were being groomed. They were being groomed by FBI agents to do it. It's crazy. Nobody wants to talk about it. Same thing happened at Uvalde. Same thing happened at the Buffalo grocery store. Same thing. Same thing. Sandy Hook. Same thing. So why would you want to have these same institutions be the ones protecting your children? That's totally illogical. It doesn't make any sense. And most people are not aware of the fact that legally, The police officers have no obligation to protect you. I firmly believe these things oddly happen right when gun control gets pressed on the media. Yeah, exactly. Because it's all for a narrative which hasn't worked in over 20 years. Americans are not going to give up their guns, and that's a good thing. Every single time. Yeah, it's a really good thing that Americans are not falling for it. I don't think they ever will. I don't think they ever will give up their guns. It's a losing battle. But these events will keep happening and happening and happening because they want to try and take the guns away. But it ain't going to work. It ain't going to work. And the militarization of schools is only going to create fertile ground for more opposition to gun ownership. Nope, I've always noticed when the news talks gun laws and bans this stuff, happens. Right. And I think that if we militarize schools like Lindsey Graham wants to do, and if we arm teachers like Mike DeWine wants to do, what we're going to see is fertile ground for catastrophes to take place, false flag events, whatever, psychological operations, whatever, to take place that will then be used against the right to Second Amendment. It'll then just hurt all people who are pro-gun and pro-Second Amendment. I think that, most people should be able to own a cannon. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm very pro-Second Amendment. But I think right now we're having a false binary conversation regarding, do we take away the guns? Do we not take away the guns? Defund the CIA and the FBI, right? Well, the FBI does some good work. The CIA does some good work. I'm not completely against those institutions, but they're not good. And further push the narrative, 100%. But overall, they're not good. They've been corrupted, right? I mean, the CIA was essentially started to create shadow governments around the world, basically topple other governments, and then implement our own leadership, our own governments. And the FBI, if I'm not mistaken, was created during the whole communist thing. We had a lot of abuse of power there by J. Edgar Hoover. The FBI agents deserve a lot of credit because they've, if I'm not mistaken, it has been them who have busted a lot. Maybe it's been police officers, one of the two. Police officers or FBI agents have busted a lot of child abusers. Right, I see your point. The bill will cause free reign to entry to schools by crazies. Potentially. I'm not calling veterans crazy. They may be psychologically evaluated and say that they're good to own a weapon. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that it will allow for the potential of more of these events to take place. No, but the crazy ones. Yeah, like maybe a crazy teacher, right? But not even one of them. Not every one of them. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I get what you're saying. I just wanted to clarify a little bit that I think it's going to be used more so to allow false flags, psyops to take place that will then push the narrative even more. That's why I don't agree with it. And I think that we're in this false binary. It's not just take away the guns or militarize the schools. It's not. Yes, people lash out and can't control themselves. Those are the issues people have. How do we even control that? I don't know that you really can. I mean, morality, have a more morale society, 100%. Yeah, 100%. So it's a false binary. It's like take away the guns, militarize the schools. Or why don't you just homeschool your child? If you can't or you don't feel comfortable homeschooling your child, there's community schools popping up everywhere. So like community schools are becoming a really popular thing. There's a big movement to start getting out of public schools anyway and into community schools because everybody sees the problem with public schools. I don't know many people who said that they got a really good public school education. I don't. I don't know many people who say that they had a really good time in public school either. I don't. I mean, my time in public school was fine. I didn't have an issue. But I know there's a lot of people who did not have an enjoyable time. I will be homeschooling my kids really if I can and moving far out of the city. That's a smart move. You know, I think that everybody should homeschool their kids because I feel that it's the responsibility of the parent to do so. And I feel that moving out of the city is a smart play, depending on where you're at. Some cities will probably be okay, but most cities probably not. Want them to learn to live off the land and stay away from the craziness. I feel it will be beneficial. 100%. I agree with that 100%. That's what we want our children to grow up in. Right now, we live in a upper middle class city, or maybe just a middle class city, upper middle class city. It's not even really a big city. It's kind of a small little town. I live in Phoenix, which is becoming mini Los Angeles. Yeah, Phoenix, definitely not a good place to live. I had a cousin who lived in Phoenix, and that was like 2015, 2016, and he said that outside of his apartment, he would see people breaking into cars. A lot of crazy shit happened over there. So, yeah, definitely in Phoenix, I would not want to stay. Definitely rural, small towns. That's the way to go, you know. But yeah, so that's pretty much all that I had to cover for today. I thank everybody for showing on up and participating, adding their comments, being here. Really good show. And we'll be back here tomorrow. So be sure to hit the plus sign, follow, like, share, subscribe. MOT Media everywhere. So Apple, Spotify, YouTube. If you want to subscribe there. Check it out over here. But yes, we'll be back here. Thanks, Chief. Be well. Have a good one. You do the same. So we'll be back here tomorrow, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll have a lot of gravy to talk about. Let's see. Public schools are literal prisons for children, and the only place many people will ever encounter physical violence in their lives. I agree with the second half of that. I don't know that they're literal prisons, but I get what you're saying. I really do. And then, wouldn't they become more like prisons if you arm the teachers and then have militarized guards outside? Probably. But they're definitely not literally prisons. But I get what you're saying. But all right, guys, I will be back tomorrow, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Much love. Peace.